The Prime Minister has tried to draw a line under it, but the question is not going away. Can Health Secretary Matt Hancock keep his job after admitting breaking lockdown guidelines by kissing an old friend he'd hired as an aide?
I won't get my dad back now, and I played by the rules, unlike him, and unlike this government, it seems, as a whole.
Also, more than 150 people are still missing in the Miami, Florida building collapse. As it emerges, there was a warning the building could be unsafe. And
this is ITV News with Samina Ali Khan.
good evening. Despite the Prime Minister's insistence that there are no more questions for Matt Hancock to answer, MPs from all of the main parties have managed to think of a few, such as how can he remain as Health Secretary after admitting he broke his own department's lockdown guidance to hug and kiss an aide at work last month? And exactly how was that aide, an old university friend of Mr Hancock, hired in the first place? Martha Fairley reports.
Number 10 says the matter is closed. Today's front pages tell a different story. A day after the Sun printed CCTV images of the Health Secretary in a clinch with aide Gina Coladangelo in breach of COVID guidelines, some Tory MPs are calling for him to go. Matt Hancock had fallen short, North Norfolk's Duncan Baker told his local paper, saying, "I will not in any shape condone this behaviour, and I have in the strongest possible terms told the government what I think." Today, the Probation and Prisons Minister, trying to promote justice being seen to be done through community payback schemes for offenders, didn't agree the Health Secretary should be for the chop.
Look, I mean, Matt Hancock has been a very effective minister, a very effective Secretary of State. Issues about what happens to Matt Hancock is between him and the Prime Minister.
Safia Na's father died of COVID-19 earlier this year and, like many other grieving families, finds the Health Secretary's behaviour insulting.
I played by the rules, unlike him, and unlike this government, it seems, as a whole. And, you know, every day is sort of tinged with a sense of grief. And it's really, really painful. It's really, really hard. And clearly, he just doesn't care at all.
Mr Hancock's integrity is also being questioned. Ms Coladangelo was an old university friend long before she became his advisor.
When you're in that situation where someone it seems that you're involved with is in a taxpayer-funded role in your department, and that, you know, on the way to doing that, you've not just breached regulations or guidance, you've breached the law, that is a really fundamental undermining of the public trust. It's obviously it's a massive conflict of interest.
Matt Hancock has apologised for breaching COVID guidelines, but does the man who wrote the COVID rules still have the credibility to ask others to follow them? Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Fires are burning in the rubble of a collapsed 12-storey apartment block in Florida, slowing efforts to locate and hopefully rescue the 159 people still listed as missing in the disaster. Meanwhile, it's emerged an engineer found evidence of major structural damage in the building 3 years ago. Our US correspondent Emma Murphy is in Miami for us. Emma, what is the latest there?
We just had an update from the authorities here in Miami, and they've been telling us that a number of small fires, which we were reporting on yesterday, have come together, and that means that they're now having to deal with quite a significant blaze within the debris. And the problem is that they don't know exactly where that fire seat is in order to tackle it. And because that's there, they're having a real problem getting rescue teams in. They can't get the rest of the rubble away because they can't get enough people in there and enough heavy lifting equipment to be able to tackle the fire. So it's a real catch-22 situation for them. And then, of course, there is the issue of the conditions. It's pretty sunny now, but it has been very, very heavy rain over the past 24 hours, and that has hampered their attempts to try and deal with this situation. We've been told that overnight there were no more people found nor bodies recovered. And I was just chatting with one of the rescue teams who was going into the site behind me, and he said that they were only actually able to work on there for around 35 minutes at a time. Such is the heat and the intensity of the smoke where they are trying to locate people. Now, the other thing that's been of note today is the fact that this report has come to light from 2018, where basically people were warned of the fact that there was significant concrete disintegration in the area underneath this block. It's not clear whether or not that is what caused it, but it's clear that they are now starting to look at that as a line of inquiry.
Emma, thank you very much. A big push to get the last of England's adults vaccinated against COVID-19 is underway this weekend. In a drive that's become known as Grab a Jab, hundreds of walk-in centres are open for vaccination without an appointment. You can find your nearest one by entering your postcode on the NHS website. Meanwhile, thousands of people have marched on Downing Street to protest against government COVID restrictions. The so-called Freedom March coincided with a climate change demonstration, causing traffic gridlock in central London. And there's been not one, but two big crashes on the opening stage of the Tour de France today. This first one was caused by a fan on the course. British four-time winner Chris Froome was involved in the second. Wales are down 1-0 in their Euro 2020 match against Denmark this evening. And while they still have most of the second half to fight back and earn a place in the quarter-finals, they'll have to do it with very little fan support in the stadium in Amsterdam. Our correspondent Lucy Watson has been following the Wales campaign and brings us their day so far.
I'm an alien, I'm a legal alien, I'm a Welshman in Amsterdam.
There may not be many of them, but the Welsh voices bring something special.
Welshman in Amsterdam.
Amsterdam is hosting barely 100 of them, so their team aren't the only ones with a job to do.
And it almost feels like representing the country because there's going to be so few of us here.
My sons are stuck in Wales, so they said, Mum, you're the only one who can come here, so you have to go.
It's nice that we get to be one of the few, and we'll try and make enough noise to make up for the ones that aren't here.
Come on, Wales!
The underdogs are facing the neutrals' favourites, and what the Danes don't lack is confidence.
Have you seen us? We're absolutely amazing.
We win, definitely.
Inside the arena, Wales battle to have their voices heard. Heavily outnumbered by the Danish supporters, but what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in raw passion. Grown men reduced to tears. If Wales were to make their mark, they needed their talisman to fire on all cylinders. And Gareth's wonderful goal from Kasper Dolberg. 1-0 to the Danes. The Prime Minister approved.
Denmark strike first.
Well, in the last few moments, Samina, Denmark have scored yet another goal. This is not the start that Wales, any Welsh fan, would have dreamed of. It has been a very, very noisy evening here in Amsterdam. The stadium feels almost packed. Such is the power of the voices from the Danish supporters, and it is justified. Their confidence winning out so far in the first half, and we are about 5 or so minutes into the second half. The dream is not quite over for Wales yet, but it's looking very tricky for them.
OK, we'll leave it there. Lucy, thank you. Now, this year's Armed Forces Day has been a chance to celebrate the service of military personnel during the pandemic. A VIP lunch was held at the National Memorial Arboretum, at which 100 servicemen and women were thanked for their efforts over the past year. Finally, if you've had enough of the price of postage stamps constantly going up, don't worry, because the stamp known as the Red Mauritius was worth 1 penny when it was posted in 1847. Today, it sold at auction for £7 million. And that is it. I'm back with the late news at 25 minutes past 10. For now, though, from the team here, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.